What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I want to answer an interesting question, a really interesting question that was asked over on the Facebook group yesterday. You see, a new person came into the group. Well, at least they've got a little badge that says they're a new member. And it was Michael J. Childress, and he said, I haven't gotten the chance to read this group's past posts, but 7 of us want location cards to battle on. Make them big character-sized locations like the Ark, Teletron 1 maybe, or just various locations in the Transformers universe. Each location could give benefits or complications to the game. Maybe each player brings one location that fits their deck. Thoughts? And I had a lot of thoughts. And in fact, I had so many thoughts that I thought, you know what? Time to make a video about this. Now, my first thought, and it's not the cheeriest thought, I apologise for this. Transformers doesn't have iconic locations. It just doesn't. I'm sorry if that sounds mean. Now, I'm going to be using 2 games as comparative pieces in this video. We're going to be talking about the Pokemon trading card game, and we're going to be talking about Star Wars Destiny. And the reason is, they are successful card games. They have location cards in, and they are based on beloved properties, just like the Transformers trading card game. Now, I know not everybody agrees with me. I did put this in the Facebook group that they don't have the iconic locations. Shall we say there was some pushback? So I did a very simple Google search. I Googled iconic Pokemon locations, and I got a bunch of links to... Well, I mean, what are some iconic locations in the Pokemon video game franchises? The definitive ranking of all 100 Pokemon towns and cities. I did the same thing for Star Wars, and although we did get a bunch of, hey, here's what you can visit in real life, we also did get the most iconic locations in Star Wars, and to be fair, even the places you can visit in real life, they're talking about come here so you can see where this was filmed. Iconic locations. When I did the same for Transformers, generally, all I got was a list of places where it was filmed. There was no listing of the most iconic things, locations. I mean, the last result on page 1 was category Cybertron locations, Transformers, Universe, MUX. There aren't the same iconic locations. There just aren't. Now, that to me is one of the reasons why we didn't start with a Transformers trading card game having location cards. And whereas I open a booster pack of Star Wars Destiny and go, hey, it's that planet where that thing happened. Or I open a pack of Pokemon cards and go, hey, it's that town where we found this Pokemon or this character. If they did location cards in the Transformers trading card game, I would be doing an awful lot of Googling, trying to figure out where they actually are. And I consider myself a casual Transformers fan. Here's the thing, though. I don't think that matters. Now, my first point in this video is, and I think this is objectively true, the Transformers do not have, I think objective, the same level of iconic locations as Pokemon and Star Wars. Because I think you could take Pokemon and Star Wars locations, show them to a casual fan and they'd know where they were. I think you did the same for Transformers and people wouldn't. But that doesn't matter. Because actually they could be a really, really good mechanic in the game. So at this stage, I think, and just to be clear, I am all in favour of introducing location cards. Now at this stage, it's really useful to look at the different approaches taken by both Pokemon and Destiny. So in Pokemon, we have what are called stadium cards. And stadium cards are put in your regular deck of 60 cards, and when you draw them, you may play them. You are only allowed to have, between both players, 1 stadium card in play at one time. That's a fairly standard thing across all card games, it looks like. You're only allowed 1 stadium in play at a time, and you can replace the other person's stadium. However, you cannot replace a stadium with the same stadium, and you cannot play more than 1 stadium during your turn. You used to be able to, that is no longer the case. So examples of the kind of things we saw were Shrine of Punishment. It puts 1 damage counter on particular types of Pokemon between turns, so it gets a little bit of extra damage on the field. We've got things like Power Plant that turn off abilities of certain Pokemon, or things like Viridian Forest that let you discard a card from your hand of your choice to search your deck for an energy card, the essential resource in the Pokemon trading card game. We don't really have an equivalent in Transformers. You can just attack, but in Pokemon you need to attach energy to attack. So if we look at something like my boy Donphan here, you can attack for just a single energy, or you can put free energy on and keep attacking. So Viridian Forest would allow you to search that energy. And yes, for people that do play the Pokemon trading card game, those cards were never legal at the same time. Shh, it's just an example. So essentially, you can play as many stadiums as you like. There's a limit to 4 of any card in your deck, other than basic energy, the resource. But other than that, you can play as many stadiums as you like, and every turn you can play a stadium, as long as you haven't already played one that turn, and as long as that exact stadium is not already in play. But you'll also notice that the stadiums affect both players equally. So Power Plant turns off abilities of all Pokemon that are EX or GX, yours and your opponents. There was a brief foray in the Pokemon trading card game into double-sided stadiums that would affect different players differently, i.e. they would have one effect for one side of the table, one player, and one effect for the other, but let's not get into that, that's too confusing. Now, if we take Star Wars Destiny as a counterpoint here, they have a very, very different way of dealing with it. In Star Wars Destiny, you both, that is both players, take a location card to the game. And at the beginning of the game, you roll all of your dice, and whoever rolls the highest number, because you play with dice in Destiny, gets to have their location card in play. So both players take a location, and it is, to a large degree, randomly determined at the beginning of the game whose location will actually be used. But of course, that's not it. Because during a round of Destiny, so essentially during the turns, you take it in turns to take actions until you both pass consecutively, and then you go to an upkeep phase, and then you keep taking turns alternately. Sounds like fun. One of the things you can do during your round is that you can claim the battlefield. If you claim the battlefield, you're not allowed to do anything else until there has been another upkeep phase, and your opponent can keep going doing whatever they like within the rules of the game, except for claim the battlefield. So you've got this really great back and forth of you both take a location, one gets chosen for the game, and then both players fight over it during the game. So the entire battle, essentially, the game, ends up happening over a single location. And once again, like in the Pokemon trading card game, we see that these location cards affect both players equally. So for instance, the battlefield might be Feed Royal Palace, they're called battlefields, not locations. And it lets you remove one of your dice to gain a resource. In Destiny, you essentially, during your turn, put a bunch of dice in front of you, and then you can get rid of one of them to gain a resource, which you use to pay for additional actions. Or you can spot a neutral character, i.e. go, hey look, I've got a neutral character, and then you can take an additional action. So rather than taking it in turns to take actions, you get to take another one right away. Sounds like fun! Or you might go something like Snoke's Throne Room, whereby when you claim it, you spot a hero character to give yourself a shield that prevents a bit of damage, or spot a villain character to remove a shield from an opponent's character. So essentially, there's this little back and forth where you want to try and claim the battlefield to either give or take away shields. You want to leave it as late as possible, but if you leave it too late, you run the risk of your opponent claiming it instead. I think Transformers would have to go for a Pokemon model. And the reason very simply is, Destiny's model is built into the game. You both have to take a battlefield to the game, and we don't have that right now. So now all of a sudden we're adding in a fundamental start of the game rule, which forces players to take location cards, or battlefields, whatever you want to call them. And that means that players that only bought the first couple of expansions, who don't have location cards, would then not be able to take one, and that would be awkward. Whereas you can play 40 plus battle cards in your Transformers deck, and at the moment we've got actions and upgrades. Well, what's to stop you adding in a third category? You've now got actions, upgrades, and locations. And if you want to play a location, you can, that would be fine. If you don't want to play a location, don't play a location. Simple as that. And that way, you still give players the opportunity to take advantage of these cards, but you don't force them to take advantage of these cards. It introduces a new mechanic, sure, but it means that players can do it if they wish, but similarly, they can ignore it. At the moment, we're in a very stadium-heavy format in the Pokemon trading card game, but there have been plenty of formats since I started where we just don't play many stadiums. Of course, we then get into a very interesting mind game here of if you don't play stadiums in your deck, you run the risk of your opponent playing stadiums, and their stadium of choice will stay in play for the entire game. And it means that if you don't think your opponents are going to be playing many stadium cards, you can then play fewer stadiums, so you play 2 copies rather than 4, knowing that your opponent isn't going to be getting rid of it. And then we end up introducing cards like Field Blower was one we had a little while ago, that remove stadium cards. Or we have characters, there was a Marshadow for instance, with an ability that removes stadium cards. See where I'm going with this? It opens up whole new avenues in the game. I'm not saying that the Star Wars Destiny model is worse than the Pokemon model, but I am saying that the Star Wars Destiny model needs to be implemented at the beginning of the game, as in when the game launches. I think adding it later causes too much confusion. But adding in a third type of battle card, actions, upgrades, locations, I think that would be awesome. Once again, as with every game, we would need it to be 1 location per game, though you would potentially be able to change it. And then you could do all kinds of things. You could have a location that gave Autobots like Grimlock, love me some Grimlock, a little bit of extra health. Or a stadium that gives Insecticons Bold 1. That would be way too good, but it would be fun. Or you could have a stadium that gives characters with 5 stars or less, fewer, I'm looking at you Flame War, plus 2 health, or things of that nature. The possibilities are endless, and I kind of love that. I am a huge fan of these location cards. I want them to be implemented into the game, but hopefully in this video I've given you some examples of how that can be done and made a decent argument for why I think for this game the Pokemon model will be better than the Star Wars model. But hey, maybe I'm just talking rubbish. Maybe I'm not right at all. Well, good news. There's a comment section, so might I encourage you to go nuts while also requesting that you be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, that's where we talk Transformers and other games, and do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wassy Plays.